Unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time. All right, time for another tribalism update. Not popular posts. Of course, none of these are very popular. But I'll tell you, it is a tough change to make, going from individualism, radical individualism, to tribalism, because there are so many things that are easier about individualism. Tribalism is harder. It is harder to be a tribalist than it is to be an individualist, because when a problem comes to your door when you're an individualist, you just go, I don't care, it doesn't affect me, I only care about people one at a time, whoever I meet. You know, it's an opt-out kind of policy. You know, I only care about what affects me and who affects me. And I just judge people one by one, and I can change my environment as much as I want to. If I don't want to meet people from other tribes, I simply just don't go where they are. It's a very hands-off kind of a position, individualism is. It allows you to take a holier-than-thou attitude while really not doing anything. And one could make the argument that staying out of the way is good. You know, sure, you could. There's a war that needs to be fought. Two tribes are fighting over resources. You can say, I'm an individualist. I don't fight for either tribe. I don't belong to either of those tribes. You know, even though you live in the territory of one tribe, and what happens to that tribe affects you. And if the other tribe sees you as a member of that tribe, you know, at least you can just say, well, I'm staying out of it. You know, I don't know how you could turn that into a virtue, really. You can kind of squeeze it into, I'm out of sight, out of mind. Maybe you're off living in a different part of the woods, you know. You don't require much from either tribe, you know. It's an easy position to take, but if you're a tribalist and you see an opposing tribe and they consider you to be part of a tribe that they hate or that they're in competition with, you don't need to hate anybody, by the way, in tribalism. You don't need to hate somebody to want more land for your family. You don't have to hate the other people, you know. I don't think that the pigeons hate the crows, you know. I don't even think they hate the hawks. You know, they probably just understand it at some level that hawks got to eat. You know, it's part of the ugly underbelly of this miracle known as existence, you know. But the tribalist position means you don't just get to scoot off and hide and claim superiority. You know, you have to get in there and you have to take a dirty job in the trenches or do something to help the fight, to secure the things. Individualism is essentially a very selfish, intentionally selfish thing. Now, here's the reason why it's hard to go to tribalism when you come from that, is because so many things about that argument, the individual argument, do benefit a tribe, right? Selfishness can benefit the tribe. Even if, again, this is the reason why I've switched, just in case I want to stay clear on this. The reason why I switched is because I realized it was arrogant to not accurately describe reality. And in the rest of the natural world, and including humans, it is tribal. It just is, you know? That's the way nature designed it. That's why we're different. That's why we're peculiar. That's why we're, we have our different traits culturally. As much as you want to say that, different races aren't different, they are. It's just stupid. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. It's painfully dumb. It's just painfully dumb to not acknowledge it, to just put on your blinders and put your fingers in your ears and go, blah, 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 I can't hear you. Stop saying we're different. We're more the same than we are different. Okay, great, great, great. I'm more like a cow than I am like a bumblebee. I share 98% of my genes with a pig. You know what I mean? The differences are what make things unique. The difference from one individual to the next, even within a tribe, can be huge. And you can focus on the commonalities, and that's great. But ignoring the differences, that's what communism is. That's what communism is. This is where I kind of woke up to this when I realized I was talking to this woman that I've known on the internet for the past 6 or 7 years. Lives in San Francisco. But I realized in talking to her, she was also an individualist and had been her whole life. And we had lots of nice conversations, but they always tended to get, they always ended badly. And it would come and they would end badly whenever the conversation required acknowledging the difference between men and women. And that's when it kind of became clear that she wasn't really an individualist. She's a feminist, whether she knew it or not. And most of the women I know are feminists. Refer to my last recording. There's this thought that has creeped into the world that men and women are the same, and they're totally not. So you can be within a tribe, and the men and the women in the tribe are so different, it's insane. It's insane how different men and women are within a tribe. In fact, I will go as far as to say that men from one tribe have more in common with men from another tribe than they do with the women within their tribe. And I would say that the women have more in common with women from another tribe than they do with the men. They're drastically different. But realizing that most individuals, including myself, the argument really fails. The individualistic argument, the ideology just fails completely when one simply wants to pretend that a brother and a sister are the same and they have the same capabilities, that a mom and a dad have the same capabilities. They're built the same. They're individuals. How dare you look at the peculiarity? Well, it's pretty important. It's pretty important that the female fish knows she's female and the male fish knows he's male. It's pretty important that the buck knows he's a buck and the doe knows they're a doe. Of course, we don't get into confusion when we leave humanity. There's no confusion there. But the individualistic, the philosophy is individualism automatically imposes a confusion there, just like communism. And I realize that individualism and communism have more in common than communism and tribalism or individualism and tribalism. Tribalism is the thing that's different than communism or individualism. Individualism and communism overlap a lot more. And just in looking at my own sins in life and my own philosophical black holes and blind spots, I realized that most of them came from a stubborn adherence to individualism. It's literally a part where you close your eyes and just say, I don't want to talk about race. We talked about it too much. Even the things I would say, the things you hear people saying, Tucker even, he hasn't figured out that tribalism is a real thing either. The Christian thing is to, whenever it comes up, you refer back to some nostalgic time in the past when all the races got along just fine. Oh, well, in the 70s, we made fun of each other. It was fine, and we didn't need PC, and everything was great back then. There was racial harmony back then. And if we could just go back to that point in time, it's just like, yeah, but if you go back to that point in time and take off your rose-colored glasses, the arguments were still there. The neighborhoods were still separate. The resources were not equally distributed. The athletic ability was not equally distributed. There was no equality. There never has been. People are different. There's going to be rich people. There's going to be poor people. There's going to be short people and tall people. There's going to be fat people. There's going to be people with misshapen faces and people with perfectly symmetrical faces. That's going to be the way it is. And, while you definitely want to make room for individuals and you want to judge each individual. I mean, you're going to be an individualist anyway. You're going to choose people individually. But the competition and the categories and the demographics are real. They just are real, But that's hard. It's hard to accept because it doesn't allow you to retreat back into your little comfort zone. That little place where you can just close your eyes and be above it all. You don't have to, you can just be superior to it. I figured it out. All you people fighting, oh, you people, you're just dumb. You don't get it. And that's really what I'm seeing in the world all over the place right now, is I just see, and the internet's kind of exacerbating this phenomenon. It kind of feels like a pivot, but it's this superiority based on nothing. That's the difference. I tell this joke. One guy years ago said, I'd give anything. What a fantastic beard. And I said, no need for the compliment. It's an accomplishment that comes from neglect is not an accomplishment. I mean, you can frame it as I successfully fended off the pressure to shave while other people, for whatever reason, can't. But I did nothing to grow this beard. Like nothing. All I did was not shave it. That's an accomplishment. It's crazy. But people do view it as an accomplishment because they can't get out of the job, they can't get out of the culture, they can't get out of whatever. But accomplishments, to me, are different than just beards, okay? You've got to actually do something. You don't get to just be superior. And I think that human beings, we don't have to be lazy. We're not lazy. I'm not going to say we're all lazy, but laziness is an option. That's why there's one of the 7 deadly sins. It's an option. And we take it a lot. And it's not really a virtue. But anyway, so it's lazy to pretend to be superior above the fight. It is. It's lazy to go, I'm an individualist. Tribalism is all below me. How dare you bring up the science of human diversity? I mean, years ago, I bought a book called The Science of Human Diversity, only because it was banned. It was about eugenics or whatever. I thumbed through it a little bit, didn't read it. It's, very academic, and I'm stupid. And I'm not good at reading anyway because my mind wanders, and, 10 pages will go by and I'll realize it all went into my eyeballs, but I didn't remember any of it, So I never read it, and I mostly got it just to annoy people, to have it out so that people saw it. Because this race thing's been poking around for a long time. I just, being called a racist, I mean, I'm going to digress here for a minute, but just the idea, and this is really important, these phrases or these terms like racist, sexist, homophobe, Islamophobe, All these terms and the way that they're used negatively it's just a scam. It's the biggest scam in the world, because what they're essentially doing is they're taking a very normal, common, natural, God-given trait, and they're turning it into something evil. It's genius because you can't escape it. If somebody calls you a racist and they have this mean tone and they're using it in a they don't ever go, "Oh, nice to meet you. I love just meeting another racist. It's wonderful." You never heard that. Long ago, somebody could have done that. They could have owned the word to begin with. Like, "Oh, you're a person that notices how everybody's different." It's like you're anthropologist. Another term for that, really. Racist. I'm an anthropologist. Oh, so you're a racist. Because you're studying different human beings across the globe. Picking through bones, What race was this person that we found dead? What are the peculiar things, But now, and I'm trying to flip that. Because it's important to realize that those terms, when they load those terms with darkness or evil or negativity, they do that because it's an inescapable accusation. I've said this before, for the last 20 years probably I've been saying that calling somebody a racist is much like in Salem calling somebody a witch. It's an accusation that nobody can disprove. You cannot prove that you aren't a witch. You simply can't. Because you're just not doing your spells, and somebody can pretend that you cast a spell on them. There's nothing you can do. It's an accusation that is 100% solid. Because there's no defense. And that is also true with racism, sexism. But it's even worse with racism and sexism, because while you say somebody's a witch, they aren't a witch. But if you call somebody a racist, it's true. They are a racist. Oh, but Merkley, somebody on my Facebook today, "Oh, you can't say that. We don't have any power. Nobody's doing any hiring." That's the leftist rebrand of racism, that you can only be a racist if you're in a position of power. It's nonsense. It's stupid. A racist is somebody that makes a decision based on race. They make a preference. They make a call. I'm making the call based on race. And that is something that every single human being is going to do, for good and for bad. They're going to go, "Ooh, I like that person because they're white," or "I like that person because they're black," or "I like that person because of this." That's a decision based on the characteristics that come from that racial group. I'm not going to walk through that neighborhood. Okay. I'm not going to talk to that person. I don't want to date that person. Okay. And look, it's just annoying that we have to go through this song and dance. And that's what this is. It's a song and dance that everybody's going through because they don't want that negative label, But you got to remember that the people that are calling you this, they are also just calling you negative for being a human. Finally we got to that point. I mean, we've been that way for a long time, but it's weird that you don't connect it. It's just like, okay, so I'm a racist, so you don't like me. I'm a sexist, so you don't like me. Is there any way for me to get in your good graces? No, because you're a human. You're a breather. You're a breather. The people that accuse you of those things for real are generally people that absolutely hate humanity. They hate themselves. I feel like a lot of the people, when people do use that term, "you racist," and they're so angry, sometimes it's performative. They just don't want you to find out that they are racist too. They think if they accuse somebody else of being a racist, then suddenly they're not, nobody will notice that they are. But a lot of it's too is like they've been told that they're racist in a negative way so many times, and then they do have these racist thoughts. They don't want to walk through that neighborhood. They didn't want to date the Chinese girl. They didn't want to, whatever. The black guy didn't want to talk to the white guy. Although, it doesn't usually typically. Being ashamed of being racist is it's a very white phenomenon. You don't find many non-whites being shamed of being racist, because they don't get called racist. That's the difference. Is it hasn't been directed at them. That negative tone, that negative energy, that negative label hasn't been directed at them. So it's like they haven't felt that sting. And the sting doesn't necessarily come from the word or even the concept. It comes from the negativity attached to it. Like, dum-dum, you're a racist. She's wagging her tail. She's a dog. She doesn't care. Dum-dum, dum-dum, are you a racist? Oh, look, ears perk up. She's like, fine. It's the tone. Oh, but what? Dum-dum, you racist. Ears go down. Tone. And that tone, when it's directed at you, and you attach it to a word. Anyway, I'm explaining stuff that it shouldn't need to be explained, but it still does, because I still see most of my alleged tribe members still trying to back away from the term, or still trying to explain why they're not racist and why they're not, but what they're really doing is trying to explain that they're not evil. And I don't think they are evil. They're capable of evil. All of us are. All of us do evil now, sometimes, and sometimes we don't. We try not to. But you don't need to defend yourself against being human. And if you're a human being, you're sexist. You understand the difference between the sexes. You understand it. Even if you're gay, you prefer one sex over the other. You're sexist. And again, I reject the notion that that term needs to be attached to some power dynamic. It doesn't. It doesn't. I reject that. I mock it. I ridicule it. Forget about it. You're not going to convince me. And that's the reason why that term works. It wouldn't work if it was only power dynamic. It wouldn't. The reason why they've redefined it that way is so that it would only hurt a certain group. That's the kind of the real dark thing, is because they say this group is in charge, therefore this group is the only people that can be hurt by this term. It's a way that they can defend themselves. In other words, men are the only people that can be sexist, and white people are the only people that can be racist. So therefore, white men are the only people that can be. It's so dark. It's so dark that people sit in a room or sit pondering these ideas and think, this is the way. This is the way. This is the way I'm going to trick these people. This is the way I'm going to demoralize them. This is the way I'm going to harm their tribe. This is how I'm going to get them to stop breeding, stop having babies. I'm going to make them feel so badly about themselves that they'll stop talking to their parents. They'll fight with their parents for being racists. I'm not going to answer your phone call because you're a racist. Yeah, but you're the same race as me, so it doesn't... I don't care. I have a friend. I have a cousin. Okay. All right. And I do want to bring this up again. Once you embrace the term racism, and that's what I'm doing here, obviously, I'm just saying I'm racist. Yeah. Like God is racist, like you are racist, like nature is racist. I'm like that. I am a creation of God, of nature, of reality. Reality is racist. I am also a sexist, fill in all the same things. I don't want to repeat them. God's sexist, nature's sexist. I repeated them anyway. But embracing that is not that easy. It's not that easy because even when you type it out as a stupid Facebook post, it's still, you can tell that it's not a popular thing to say. People don't want to see it because there's been so much negativity loaded into those terms that they just, it creates fear in people, you know? Like, it's weird how that works, how you can manipulate somebody's emotions just by tricking them into believing that something is natural to them is bad, you know? And you see this in the medical field. I mean, it just gets so dark with the people chopping off their dicks and slicing off their tits and changing their boobs and their nose jobs and all this other kind of shit. Just the absolute darkness that comes from these people that operate these industries, because it's an industrial thing too. You know, there is a lot of incentive in convincing people that they're broken and damaged and flawed. You know, I just kind of get a sick feeling in my stomach when I'm listening to any podcast, and the big new push, the company that seems to be in every single podcast is BetterHelp. BetterHelp. You know, shrink. Get a shrink. You need a therapist. That's dark. That is dark. That is dark that being a therapist or going to have therapy is no longer a thing that is only for people who think they're trapped in the wrong body or think they're a goat or think there are 25 voices in their heads. But no, it's for you. For you, the one who's having a hard time dealing with the fact that so many people are chopping off their dicks and their tits. That's for you. You need the help. You're broken because you're racist, you're sexist, you're human. You're breathing. You're raising the temperature of the earth and you're causing the animals and the creatures to suffer. You know? It's really, really dark. And I've been feeling the darkness for the past couple of weeks because I've been, fighting to instead of ignore it like I was doing with individualism. I'm an individualist. The answer is just not caring. The answer is just not dealing with it. Opting out of everything. But that doesn't change it. It doesn't change the fact that thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people feel broken because they've been told that they were broken. And they're signing up for BetterHelp. And these BetterHelp doctors they're not helping them, they're making them worse. You're not going to find a doctor that's going to put himself out of a job. If you're signing up for BetterHelp, you can bet on the fact that you're going to need more and more help the longer you sign up for that service. Just like going to the hospital, just like taking drugs. If you start relying on your doctor who's getting paid, your drug dealer that's getting paid to deal you drugs, you're going to take this drug, and then you're going to take another drug to deal with the side effects from that drug, and so on and so on. You don't meet people that are on one drug. You know that. When you find somebody that's on drugs, and you go into their bathroom, you never open up you rarely open up a medicine cabinet that has one prescription in it. You just don't. You open it up, you either find 0 drugs, maybe a bottle of aspirin off the shelf, Tylenol, probably less so now. Or, you'll get the aspirin, maybe a nasal thing, which, by the way, I don't think you should use. Because I'm just going to take a break here. Here. Let me tell you something about a clogged nose that I found out about 10 years ago. I'm going to share it with you. If you have a clogged nose, and don't take my medical advice, but this works for me. Instead of going to a nasal spray or something, just close your mouth and until you're almost ready to die. One of your nostrils will clear up. It will go, we can't die here because of this. I'm not talking about asthma, just talking about regular person that gets congested. Try it. Just be stubborn. Keep that fucking mouth. Do not mouth breathe. Anyway, free advice from Dr. Merkley. Yeah, you're not going to get... The incentive is there to keep you hooked. The incentive there is to hurt you and damage you. The DSMR is filled with human traits, and they've turned them into diagnoses that are legal, that can get you put into jail. You know? It's dark, but it's the same stuff as calling somebody a racist or a sexist or a homophobe or a XYZ religion phobe, or a government phobe. How come that one doesn't exist? You governophobe. Yeah. But anyway, the switch has been, it's rough going. And I think it's because of that attachment, the dark place where we feel like we can anoint ourselves as being superior without having to do anything for it. You'll see it. You see all these people. And here's the problem with online stuff too. And how this kind of exacerbates itself. The sicknesses kind of exacerbate yourself. It's a sickness to appoint yourself as better than someone without having to do anything. Somebody is, let's say they're the highest jumper in the world or the best football star. If you just go, I think sports are dumb. Well, guess what? You're better than them. You didn't have to practice. You didn't have to get good at anything. A singer, that singer that won American Idol, I hate that kind of music. I prefer Lou Reed, who doesn't know how to sing, Easy score for you because you can sing along to Lou Reed and sound just as good. But if you have to measure up to Mariah Carey, that's going to take years of practice. You're not going to have the Christina Aguilera chops or Whitney Houston chops. Oh yeah, but you can do Lou Reed. You can do Dylan. You can do all these guys easy. So why not just say they're the best singers? It gets you off the hook. You just get to be superior without having to do anything. And if you call Trump bad or Trump is stupid, fat, orange, dumb guy, you just get to be better than it. And here's the sick part. Like, if I make a post that says, everybody's racist and it's okay, 3 or 4 likes, because nobody wants to like that. They don't want to touch that shit. But if I come out with some snarky anti-Trump thing, or just Pam Bondi's the weak link, or Kash Patel is the weak link, or just some criticism where I appoint myself superior, I appoint myself the judge and the jury over these people, and I can devalue them, I'll get tons of likes. And that's, to me, evidence to support this claim, that people prefer to take the easy route. They'd rather than having gratitude, which requires some humility, they'd rather have snark and appoint themselves as being better. It's I've said this here before, but it's a riskier proposition to support someone than it is to criticize them. Because if you vouch for somebody or support them, you open yourself up to criticism for the things that they do. And you kind of have to measure yourself on by their high standards. I don't want to get into some big long Trump thing, but I've never seen a guy in my life that has the stamina and the ability to keep going like he does. You know, like here's one where people think they're better than Trump. You know, this whole MTG thing. I've gone on and on about it. You know, if you're on a football team and you got a team member that doesn't want to play with your team and they put on a different uniform and they're always criticizing your team and they're talking shit about your team, you know, and they demoralize your team, and your team demoralization works, you want that person off your team, right? It makes sense to Trump. We live in a system where teams are the system. You got Democrat team, you got Republican teams. You could have 10 if you wanted to. Other countries do. They have parliaments. We don't. We have 2. Okay? So that's the system we're dealing with. You need the votes on your team. If your team doesn't win, the other team wins. It's important to have the votes. When there's a slim margin, you need every fucking vote. So when you got these grandstanders, people that I like and I want to like, and that in a conversation I would agree with a lot, Massey, Rand, and Green, if they're demoralizing your team and voting against your team and not voting, your team's going to lose. And if your team loses, the other team wins. And let me tell you something, the other team is not a good team. They hate America. You can't let that team win. But, you know, again, if you just, I'm above it all. I'm above the two-party system. I don't like the teams. There shouldn't be teams. Okay, great. You realize that's going to be a long time coming before we get to the 3 or 4 teams, and that's not guaranteed to make things any better. Do you want to live in a place where we have 5 teams and the team that had 17% of the vote of the country won? You know? 20%, let's just do math easy. The team that won with 20% now rules the country. That means 80% of the people didn't want them. Anyway. But again, if you post a criticism, tons of likes. And that's rooted in this opting out superiority. I'm better than Trump and his administration. I don't have to do any of the dirty work. These Republicans, these people, blah, blah, blah. Look, I got lots of complaints about them. But if you opt out of the tribalism, and that's part of tribalism, even Republican versus Democratism, that's tribalism too. If you want to get in there and play, it's harder. If you're going to go and you have a team, you've got to negotiate with the team. You've got to figure out how to get your team to win. And that requires, you can't just go in there and say, you disgusting team, vote my way or else. That's not how it works. You can't do that on the basketball court. You can't do that in football. You can't do that in politics. If you want your team to win, you're going to have to find the people that have power on your team, the leaders in your team, the people that have the most vote, and you're going to have to massage them. And you're going to have to inspire them. If you are going to correct them, they've got to be corrected in a way that they respect it. You can be hard on your team members, but if they don't respect you and you don't get their vote, if you pass them the ball and they don't like your team and they just throw it out of bounds, you're fucked. You know? So this opting out, and that's what the Massey, especially Massey and Rand, Marjorie is just, I'm just going to call her a woman, honestly. But with Massey and Rand, they're the libertarians, the individualists that just simply think that they are above the team. They're just above playing teams. And you can't have that when you need every member of your team. It's like, guys, just please quit our team. Go out and be a legit opponent. Take off our uniform, please. Because it's worse when you're wearing our uniform and we're working against us. This is logical. And it doesn't matter how good of people Rand and Massey are. If they're going to vote against the team and your team loses, the other team wins, that's bad. That's really, really bad. And you have to wonder if maybe they want the other team to win. You just have to. And I'm telling you right now, anybody that wants the Democrats to win, bad. It's not good. It's not good. But yeah, getting into tribalism is more work. It's more work because you have to accept that there are people on your team that you don't want to deal with, and you're going to have to deal with them. But why did Trump, if he's such a team member, why did he get so mad at Marjorie Taylor Greene, Rand, and Massey, but then he was so nice to Mom Donnie? Did you really just ask that question? And why did you use that tone when you asked me? Because Mom Donnie's not on the other team. Or not on his team. He's on the other team. and when you're working with the other team, you employ completely different measures. Mom Donnie is a declared open opponent. And if you notice, I don't know if people notice this, but, well, a lot of people did. They're writing about it. Everybody's talking about it. Mom Donnie looked like a little boy compared to Trump. Trump patted him on the back. Oh, you can call me a fascist. I don't care. The little child, or whatever. That's we're going to work together. It's going to be fine. Trump's not afraid of Mom Donnie at all, But he understands that Islamism and communism are a real threat. So what happened? He left the White House hours later, just hours later. He declared the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. That is the ballsiest move. It should have been done years ago. But what does that say to Mom Donnie as Mom Donnie is barely on his jet? It's just like, guess what? Most of those emails you've been getting, most of those phone calls you've been getting, they're mine now. Because if you're fraternizing with CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood, you're fraternizing with terrorists. That's a huge move. That's why if you're just appointing yourself superior to Trump, you're just dumb. You're just being dumb. I'm not going to say you are dumb. You're being dumb. Okay? It's dumb to... That's the other really bad thing about opting out and just appointing yourself as above it all and superior, is you never really learn anything. You can just check out, not acquire a new skill, just criticize it, and it doesn't work anyway, because you might get a bunch of you, and that's the evil of the internet is you can say the dumbest shit imaginable, and you can find a group of 100 people out there that will high-five you for saying it. I've used this example before, but 25 years ago, if you said I want to chop my dick off, if you type that out somewhere, if you put a sign out in front of your house that said I want to chop my dick off, I think I'm a girl, no support group. You'd have people coming around going, yeah, don't do that. We're going to take you to this hospital. We're going to check you in, and you're going to come out with your dick, not chopped off, because you live in a small town, and we don't have the doctors that do dick chopping here. But now, you set it online, boom, a whole group of people to support you. And there's so much support for being above it all, for being better than the races. And again, if you're better than the racists, you're better than humans. If you're better than the sexists, you're better than humans. You're better than everyone. You're above it. You're outside it. You're anointed. You're special. Like, share, subscribe, heart, all. List your virtues. List all your virtues. Get all those likes. Convince yourself you're better than all the people doing the shit jobs. The hard fucking jobs. Anyway, I don't know if I accomplished anything through this recording. I have a headache. I'm obviously dehydrated, and my voice is raspy and thin. So, I will end this recording and drink some water and take an aspirin that I will get from my medicine cabinet that has 0 prescription drugs. Because I'm so much better than drug companies and doctors. Anyway, thanks for listening. Unnecessary outro song.